can you explain about Kubernetes backup, like using Velero? So tell about which
Velero.
scenario it is going to restore and if possible. So, Suraj, do you have any experience working with
No,
Velero from before? Okay.
Velero, I don't
Okay.
have experience.
Okay, so I did have one experience working with Velero, and if suppose let's say in your organization that you're using Kubernetes and you're creating objects like pods, deployments, config maps, secrets, and so on. So at one point of time, if you want to do a
Mhm.
backup of your entire namespace within Kubernetes where you have all these objects,
Okay.
you can use Velero, which runs as an agent within your Kubernetes cluster, and you can give it enough permissions to go
Okay.
ahead and take these backups and put it onto S3 or
Snapshots.
onto S3 or even as any local installation of S3 like Minio and so on, right? So you can go
Oh,
ahead and
okay.
back up your entire cluster and then put all of your objects into S3 or Minio. But at the same time, Velero also allows you to even back up the data on your persistent volumes and the persistent volumes that you created through storage classes or through claims. So you can still back up that data also. It does it as snapshots and it also stores the
Okay.
data onto S3 or onto local installation of S3 like Minio within the cluster that you installed, right? So of course, yes, it can be completely
Oh, that's
used
good.
in terms of backing up your Kubernetes objects for sure. Yeah. So let's say that at one point of time, like 10 days later, you would like to restore your backup. Like let's say that someone has messed up with your secrets and you would like to partially restore only that secret. It's
Mhm.
100% possible to restore it from your backup that you took like 4 or 5 days before. So it's a good practice to always back up your Kubernetes
Okay.
clusters when it comes to production environments, right? It's one of the best practices to do that.
Mhm.
But other than that, there are other enterprise tools that can do it for you in a much more easier way. But Velero is one of the open source ones that you can possibly install within your cluster and to
Open
take
source one.
backup. Yeah, open source one that you can. That's
So
possible.
this
Yeah.
Velero will work. Yeah, just I have one question in my mind. Like, let's say I'm upgrading my Kubernetes cluster to some other newest version. So at that
Yeah.
time, because cluster will be recreated, right?
Yeah.
So is it give me the backup at that time also? It will restore it in the newest version of the cluster?
Okay, that's a good question. So essentially, when you're doing a cluster upgrade, you only do the upgrade for your control plane components. You don't do the upgrade for your,
Yeah,
let's
yeah.
say, your normal pods deployments. And it's always a reverse, I mean, capability is reverse supported. So even when you
Mhm.
go to something like 1.21 or 1.22, your pods deployments are still in the same API versions and so on. That doesn't change, right? So in that way, even when you do cluster
Okay.
upgrades and so on, whatever deployments that you have, whatever config maps, secrets, and all that you have, you can always restore it back. And also, it doesn't mean that when you do a cluster upgrade, you have to recreate a new cluster. Cluster upgrades are done only on the control plane. And when you
Mhm.
go with managed Kubernetes like EKS, AKS, GKE, and so on, your cluster upgrades are automatically done by them. On the control plane components, you are anyways not able to see them.
Yeah.
But you would still have all of your pods running.
Mhm.
So if at one point of time, because of the cluster upgrade on your control plane components, your nodes are being also upgraded and replaced, they would only do it in a rolling fashion. So in such a way that some of
Huh.
your pods will be
Yeah,
evicted
yeah.
and then your node would be replaced, right? So even at that point of time, it's
Right.
completely possible because anyways, everything would be in etcd. So it would Kubernetes itself would automatically recreate your objects even if a node
Mhm.
is evicted and so on. But if at all you have a backup, like that's why I mentioned like have it in S3 because S3 is already highly available and so on across. You can have multi-region buckets also if you want to, right?
Yeah, yeah.
So it's 100% possible to have really good high availability and disaster
Yeah, yeah.
recovery if at all your KH cluster goes down. If at all you are having a self-managed KH cluster, you can use
Mhm.
HCD's backup tool to back up the HCD store alone if you want to, so that even when you recreate a new
HCD.
cluster from scratch, you can
HCD.
always restore that
Okay.
backup onto HCD and it would create the objects for you automatically. So yes, Velero is one of the ways, but control plane components, you can always back up your HCD. But with managed Kubernetes, forget about control plane. Cluster upgrades are automatically done by the cloud provider. So you
Yeah,
don't have to
yeah.
worry about it.